Her angry moment goes viral. Those remarks went viral on social media before anyone realized what had actually happened. Because what transpired between Eala and Aryna Sabalenka was more than just a rally or a point. Because it was such an honest and unvarnished incident, many wondered if they had just witnessed the start of a new rivalry. Everyone in the stadium stopped in disbelief after one shout, one swing, and one unstoppable winner. Sabalenka stared at Eala as if it were inconceivable that she had lost at her own game. Eala shouldn't have replied in that manner. She shouldn't have snapped. However, even the most composed players experience strange reactions when under pressure. Something inside of her broke in that moment, or maybe something finally woke up. The tennis community would be divided by what happened, and this incident would go viral for both good and bad reasons. Before the moment went viral and the video showed up on TikTok, Twitter, and every tennis website on the internet, a story was subtly forming behind the scenes. A story that was ignored until it burst. Eala had been rising through the ranks faster than anyone could have predicted. The Giants shouldn't have been in risk because of her. Appearing on center court with a level of assurance that seemed practically unachievable for a 19-year-old was not her place. Additionally, it was not anticipated that she would be the person that the world's best player needed to worry about. But tennis is not a predetermined sport. It writes fresh ones every season. Eala wasn't a prodigy in the traditional sense. She didn't arrive with the thrill of a Coco Gauff or the intimidating might of an early-career Sabalenka. She had something far more unpredictable. His accuracy, patience, and poise unnerved critics. They claimed she was too small, too quiet, and too composed to cause any real harm. Those comments stuck with her, even if she insisted they didn't. With every triumph, she seemed to sense something more profound within herself. Something that is about to blow up. Sabalenka, on the other hand, was on the opposite side of the tennis world. A powerful woman who won the Grand Slam twice, her shouts made viewers shudder. She was the epitome of athletic intimidation. When fighters faced her for years, she was already half defeated. Her serve was not only fast but also warming. In addition to being heavy, her forehand was challenging. Her personality was fiery, but it was also uncompromising. Because of this, nobody expected her to view Eala as a threat. Although they had previously met in practice courts, player lounges, and tournament rooms, there had never been a real confrontation. Not yet. Not until the season changed and the young Filipina's wins started to grow. It wasn't until commentators began whispering, "She reminds me of a young Sabalenka." Some athletes see comparisons as compliments. For Sabalenka, they were like sparks on dry grass. Even still, despite the strain growing in silence, very few anticipated the approaching storm. Compared to high seeds, Eala did not receive the same obsessive focus from cameras. Most fans thought she was intelligent, disciplined, promising, and not intimidating. Not quite yet. However, pressure from expectations was building behind Eala's composed manner on the court. Pressure from critics, pressure from carrying a nation's aspirations on her shoulders, and pressure from understanding that she would have to change into a different person to defeat someone like Sabalenka. Their next encounter, which was supposed to be a routine match that began like any other, was crucial. But as soon as they walked into the courtroom, something seemed to change. Sabalenka smiled. Eala did not recoil when, for the first time, their energies collided like two storm fronts in the middle of an open sky. Nobody knew about it yet. But this was the contest that would change everything. At this very moment, the internet was on the verge of collapse. At this time, she finally lost it. Even though the game began with the customary excitement, everyone in the crowd sensed something beneath the surface, something sharp and unpleasant. It was unclear at first. It wasn't overly noisy. It was the kind of tension that can be found in details. A long look, a tight grip on the racket, an overly long pause. The details between Eala and Sabalenka were also difficult to ignore. From the first rally, Sabalenka fought as though she wanted to finish the match before it had even started. She hammered the ball with that characteristic ferocity for which she was known, sending power shots far into the corners. Most of the players broke under extreme pressure. But Eala didn't. She accepted each hit with a strange calm, as though she had foreseen the storm and was ready to confront it. That was the first trigger. Because Sabalenka was not accustomed to seeing that expression, not from younger players, not from strangers, and especially not from someone who was supposed to be afraid of her. Something ignited underneath when Eala faced his first powerful forehand at an even sharper angle. Sabalenka's face showed recognition rather than terror, realizing that this would not be a typical situation. Then came the moment that drastically changed the intensity of the match. Nearly 20 shots in a long comeback with neither player giving up. Sabalenka struck hard in a desperate attempt to make a mistake with a level of resolve that made the audience murmur. Eala chased ball after ball. Abruptly, Eala hit a clear, loud, and distinctive forehand winner down the line that landed precisely on the edge of the baseline. There was a gasp in the stadium. Sabalenka grew chilly. Eala also didn't rejoice. She just turned around, moved in the direction of the baseline, and prepared for the following point. That composed assurance and unwillingness to submit to Sabalenka's bullying served as the second trigger. With a quick complaint, Sabalenka turned to the umpire. Something has to do with the cue. The ball being out has a certain effect. But the playback was clear. The ball touched the line. Not even close. It was known to the audience. The umpire was aware of it. Sabalenka was also aware of it. But the goal was no longer at issue. It is related to pride. Sabalenka went back to the baseline and looked across the court as though she was waiting for Eala to answer. But Eala's silence just fueled her wrath. Sabalenka stumbled backward in an attempt to reach Eala's next serve, which came like a bullet at 120 miles per hour due to Eala's precise counterattack. The third trigger. At that moment, Sabalenka muttered something under her breath. The cameras missed the entire sentence, but the intensity suddenly changed. It was sensed by the audience. For the first time, Eala's face lit up with emotion as she sensed it. Not fear, but fire. After that, the game was no longer about tennis. It is related to control. It is related to respect. It was about making a name for oneself. Aryna Sabalenka has returned to us after vanquishing Gesso. Each point signified the beginning of the image that would soon become well known throughout the world. The game's transition from competitive to explosive was felt by everyone there. An almost palpable shift in energy. As the rallies went on, every eye in the stadium concentrated on the same reality. More furious, louder, and longer. It was now an altercation rather than a battle. Aya's calmness just made things worse for Sabalenka. Each time, Aya answered to the Belarusian's enormous forehands with a cool precision that verged on contempt. In the world of professional athletics, nothing hurts more than an opponent who won't give up, even if it's not intentional or obvious. And because of his unshakable calm, social media flew into a frenzy. Clips began to circulate before the first performance even ended. In addition to watching the game, some people posted slower replays of Aya's winning line painting along with captions such, "The child is completely unconcerned." Others tweeted things like, "She is going to burst," focusing on Sabalenka's face after losing a pivotal point. They were waiting for the breaking point. It was followed by the rally that sparked the internet. Aya slipped, reached, and produced an unlikely flip pass that painted the sideline once again when Sabalenka believed she had completed the point with a large cross-court jumper. The ridiculousness of the shot prevented the audience from immediately applauding. They hesitated, almost questioning the veracity of what they had witnessed. As soon as the line judge declared it was in, the stadium erupted, and Sabalenka's reaction went viral on the internet like a spark hitting petrol. A gaze, a step forward, and a whispered sentence were all barely captured by the microphones. That was all that was needed. In just a few minutes, fans on the internet examined every frame. Some claimed that Sabalenka cursed Aya. Others said she was complaining to herself. A few others defended her. It was called intimidation by some. The facts didn't matter because the video already had a life of its own. Commentators joined in. Players from the past shared their thoughts. Tennis websites provided side-by-side pictures of Sabalenka's irritation and Alice's calm manner, labeling photos with comments like there were fan camps for the future versus the present because the plot was simply too interesting. Aya carried on playing as if there was no digital chaos at all, but Sabalenka was not immune to the chaos. During changeovers, cameras caught her breathing heavily, shaking her head, and gripping her racket more tightly than usual. She wasn't going to melt just yet, but she was being made to go somewhere she didn't frequently go, and she appeared brittle and human. By the time Aya broke Sabalenka's serve, half of the audience knew that the match was rapidly becoming history. The other half watched Sabalenka while they awaited the inevitable detonation. The tension was no longer limited to the court. It permeated the crowd, phones, group chats, and live feeds. There was going to be a break. The event would become a worldwide video when it happened. The one that turned a rising star into a headline and a champion into a storm. Sabalenka's loss of control was initially undetectable. There was no cry, no crashing racket, no explosion sound. There was just one little release of breath. Athletes gradually give up their generosity when annoyance wins over. But the silence that ensued made it worse than any explosion she could have created. Every camera panned in as soon as Aya heard the next fracture in the armor because of the stadium's hearing system. It happened at 42 in the second set. After yet another brutal rally, Sabalenka delivered a backhand that was just inches off. This time, instead of focusing on Aya, she turned around and stared at the umpire, her box, herself, or anything else to relieve the tension inside. Her chest lifted and sunk, and she appeared trapped for the first time during the entire conflict. At that point, fans would call the break. She said something that the microphones could only hear fragments of as she walked to her towel with heavy footsteps. Whatever she said, it wasn't lovely. Videos of it immediately went viral. Several supporters claimed that she cursed at the umpire. Some claimed that she was mocking AW's poise. The truth was unknown. Stories, however, don't wait for facts. They are independent writers. Aryna Sabalenka joined us again after the victory over strangers, denouncing Sabalenka as a terrible sport. Her loyal. She was backed by supporters who said she was under a lot of stress. The intensity was a problem for traditional tennis players. Younger fans praised it, characterizing it as genuine, unvarnished, and ultimately emotional. Everybody had an opinion. But Eala felt differently. Because as Sabalenka's annoyance grew, Aya began to feel the weight of being on the other side. Fear has nothing to do with it. It wasn't intimidation. It was far more complex. Seldom do athletes admit this. She felt responsible. Not guilty, but responsible for driving Sabalenka into unknown territory. Responsible for acting as the catalyst. And the impact of what followed was heightened by that internal conflict. On the very next point, Sabalenka decided to go all out. The stadium echoed with the ferocity with which she served. Aya barely got a racket on a drifting ball that sat erect in the center of the court before returning it. In the assault, Sabalenka gave it her all. A forehand meant to terminate the rally, the game, and the uncertainty. But the tape was cut. The tiniest bit of tragedy, the tiniest net kiss. The ball fell back into Sabalenka's side, shattering her face. Her racket took off. Thrown not carelessly or at anyone, but enough to frighten the throng into silence. Gasps reverberated across the stands. Commenters stopped talking. Even Aya paused, unsure whether to look up or look away. Athletes would prefer not to have such an occurrence made public. Unvarnished, fragile, and raw. Gasping. The audience was also rude. With remarks like, "She is losing it," the video swiftly gained popularity on social media. She suffered emotional harm from Aya. A WTA meltdown is imminent. But it wasn't the criticism that caused the most pain. Everyone, even Sabalenka, realized that momentum was no longer diminishing. As it had already fallen, the entire world was watching the unraveling. When the dust settled and Sabalenka's racket made contact with the court, the match no longer felt like a competition. It resembled confessing. Unsaid, unrecognized, but revealed in the cracks of a champion's poise and the rise of a woman who had finally taken control of her own fate. The truth was not exposed in a grandiose eruption. It arrived without a sound. Looking around the internet, Eala noticed something she had never seen in Sabalenka. Vulnerability rather than rage or fear. There is a human moment beneath years of dominance, pressure, and expectation. For Sabalenka, it was more than just a loss. She was losing the story she had written for herself. The story of being unbreakable, unbreakable, and unbreakable. And Eala understood just how his heart felt. For a long time, she had been juggling who she was and who she was becoming. The world was aware of her as